Hey there. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, possibly good evening for some of you. Um, see what happened? I just lost my thingy. That's weird. Uh, um, oh, I'm sorry, Kevin. Can you share? I took over. I hit the wrong button. Um,
Not a problem. I will do so now.
that was me. These buttons are too close together sometimes. Hey, everybody. Great to see you all today. Happy Friday, everybody. Hopefully, everybody's doing well. Getting ready for the weekend, or maybe your weekend's already started. And I'm the last thing, and Kevin and I are the last thing between you and I, or you and your weekend. Looking forward to myself. It's been a long week. I'm sure probably everybody's feeling that one. Um, Closer we get to the holidays, right? Things start getting a little more intense. People got projects they want to get done, and all the rest of those. So, starting the content here in just 1 minute or so. Um, how's everyone doing today? Feeling well? Give me a thumbs up. Ready to go? Ready for another great session? My good friend Kevin's going to be leading this one today on insider risk and how we can use it with Copilot. And this is our last session of this particular series. Don't worry though, we will be starting this series again in 2026. I'm going to be sending out a survey for everybody. I'm going to send it out to just basically everybody, and it's going to ask for some feedback again, just about how you think this was, impact for you, what you learned, and there's also going to be a piece in there about what you want to see next. There's been a lot of requests for things like Defender for Cloud Apps. So that's definitely going to be on the agenda for next time. Also, inline DLP for network DLP. That's going to be part of it. There's new features and functionalities coming out for data loss prevention. I don't know if anybody has told you, but we will be doing a public preview starting really, really soon. There's a thing called a message center that customers have. You may or may not be aware of this. If you're a Microsoft customer, Office 365 customer, you get Message Center posts. Most of you probably do know about it. But I was working with one of my customers yesterday, and we noticed that we just announced, I think we announced it in the Message Center Tuesday, that data loss prevention on sensitive information types and actually in the prompt itself is going public preview now, basically. It's going to go public preview in November. The GA I noticed is going to be probably in March. So it's going to be in public preview for a while. So policies. Also, a quick plug for Ignite. Ignite's coming up soon. If you did not know, Ignite is free remotely. So you can actually get on there and consume those sessions remotely. So go to Microsoft Ignite website, hop on there, register for all these sessions. There's going to be a lot around Purview Center and Copilot and other generative AI too, right? So we cover other generative AI as well. So keep an eye out for that. Yeah, Karen, I'll take a look when I have a time. I'll put that in there. It's a great question. Somebody asked if I can actually share that. I will do so. Just give me, once Kevin starts talking, I'll have some time to look it up for you. So that's exciting news. And like I said, Ignite is out there for everybody. You can register for it, watch it. Please do. There'll be a lot of great content out there. It's here in San Francisco, so it's exciting for us as well. I'll be seeing some of my customers around, I'm sure. But definitely register online if you can. All right. Let's get kicked off here. Kevin, pick a slide. So going through the deck again, just how we looked at this before. We do have, Kevin, yeah, thank you, my friend. For today's insider risk. So insider risk for Copilot. We're going to look at those policies. Kevin's going to do a great job. We're going to look at how we create a policy. We're going to look about the alerting activities we can do on that as well. So really excited for that one. We're going to have Q&A at the end. And as always, you can ask questions in the chat window as we go. Feel free to put those in. I'll be monitoring chat today. I think my good friend Ben's out there too. So we'll be up there. I'll be posting some links also as well while Kevin's talking, so you have those handy around insider risk as well. All right, next slide. Thank you, my friend. And as always, rules of the road. So I mentioned Q&A. Microphones are going to be disabled as we go. I will take everybody, enable your microphone at the end of the session, so everybody can do some Q&A as we go. But just put them in chat. Put it chats as you go. More than happy to take questions in there too. We are going to be sending out this recording, and I'll put some links in here for all the recordings of every session. This is the last of 6 sessions, so been really great stuff. We covered a lot of material, and I'll put the links in here for everybody to view as well. It just goes back to my YouTube channel, so keep an eye on that one. Please feel free to subscribe to my channel too. I'll be doing a lot more than just security because I'm not just a security engineer. I'm also a Copilot generative AI engineer. So we're going to be doing a bunch of different things leading up to the holidays about how to use Copilot for holiday planning, how you do things using it for getting ready for the holidays from a work perspective. A lot of different posts are going to be coming in there. Also keep an eye on my LinkedIn page. I'll put that link in here in a second too. We're going to be doing a lot of sessions on LinkedIn around the next 2 months here, leading up to the new year. And I'll just keep an eye on my LinkedIn anyways, because I would post some interesting, sometimes some weird stuff in there too. And then I will be sending out a survey to everybody, so please fill out that survey. And the survey, I'm going to be asking mostly what you want to see next this time. So I'd like some more ideas. So please, please, please fill those out. All right, Kevin, go ahead. And of course, the team here, Jake Houghton, Microsoft engineer. Great to see everybody today. We've got Ben, we've got Kevin. I'll let Kevin introduce himself here when he kicks off the session. But this has been your team. Great job for the team. Big applause for everybody. It's been great sessions so far. Great attendance. It's great to see everybody out there. And this is going to be the same team moving forward. We'll probably have some guest speakers as we move forward too. I always like to give people a time to have their thoughts and bring in their own perspectives around the purview and how we can integrate it with Copilot and all the other Gen AI products. So next slide, my friend. And then just, wrap up, I'll send out all these videos. So this is what we've covered. We've covered a lot of territory, as you can see. We talked about SharePoint Advanced Management and oversharing. We talked about data security posture management for AI. We've talked about data loss prevention. We talked about e-discovery and auditing. We did communication compliance last week. That was another great session. If you didn't get a chance to check that one, like I said, I'll be putting all those links in here for those videos once Kevin kicks off. And then today, of course, Insider Risk for Copilot. And that's going to be Kevin leading that one. And there'll be new links out for registration. I've got everybody who registers about email addresses. So I'll be sending out, as we get closer to next year and we start getting some topics and set up, I'll be sending out, just notifications for everybody to come join our next sessions. We're going to keep Compliance Meets AI. I do believe it's a nice little ring to it. So that'll be the names of the sessions there too. It'll just be different topics going forward. So next slide, Kev. And then last plug for Coffee and Copilot. This is still ongoing. So this isn't really security training. This is just Copilot training. It's free for everybody out there. aka.ms/HLS Coffee. Fantastic, fantastic series that's going on there. They really talk about just using Copilot. So if you're interested in just usage of Copilot, fantastic way to do it. My friends all host this. We're all on the same team. Occasionally you'll see me come in. I'll do a little talk sometimes. But free for everybody. And it's just, it's a good another learning resource. We can't just get enough learning out there, and they do have some really great tips and tricks in there. So please make sure if you have some time. They do 3 a week, and they're going to be doing those up until I think Christmas. So lots of opportunities out there. Spread the word. Spread your team. Let them know that it's available out there for them to go to. But it's mainly focused on healthcare. But when you talk about generative AI usage and Copilot prompting and how to do it, it's really kind of ubiquitous, right? I mean, the use cases will be healthcare perspective, but all you have to do is insert your industry here type of thing, and it's pretty much good for you as well. So quick plug for that one. Really great sessions they're doing out there. All right, Kevin, slide. And the last slide really to talk about everything we're talking about here. And I have gotten a couple emails from people about asking questions on these. I will get back to you. I was sick last week. If you noticed, I didn't send out the email with the recap and the PDFs until earlier or midweek this week. My wife and I both just came down sick. So I was kind of out and about for a while. But everything that we talk about in these sessions, if you're a Microsoft customer, you probably have an account manager, and that account manager can get you access to these classes. These are live or remote classes led by somebody like Kevin or somebody like me, and we cover all these different topics. So attendance, I think they cap it. It depends on which type it is. You can have, I think, up to 16 people attending usually, so it usually covers the whole compliance team. Depending how you do it, sometimes it's a security team. Customers do it differently, but everything in there, it's really just more for healthcare. My friend, about Coffee and Copilot for government users. It's really just healthcare at this point, but it is relevant. I mean, even if you're not in healthcare, you can kind of get into it. If you're a government user, then there's probably some limitations with Copilot when it comes to GCC tenants and those sorts of things, but it's still useful, I would say. Anyways, so all of these are actually classes that you can sign up for, or I'm sorry, that you can have delivered to you by a Microsoft engineer like myself or Kevin. So talk to your Microsoft account manager, and if you're unsure who that is, drop me an email. j.cotton@microsoft.com. I'm more than happy to kind of guide you along. I have friends all over the place in Microsoft, so we can kind of get those going and get you to the right people. But they're really great classes. Back in my previous days when I was just a security engineer, I used to create all these classes. So all these classes were created originally by me. I have now passed that over to a team who does a fantastic job doing this. They really keep things up to date. It's all brand new. So they just released the newest modules 2 weeks ago, basically. So it's up-to-date content, really, really fantastic stuff. So like I said, talk to your account manager or drop me a note to help you find out who that is. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Kevin now. Kevin, why don't you introduce yourself and take control?
Sure. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate you joining this session. I believe this is the last one we have out of this webinar series. But kind of as Jay said, we have all of this other stuff coming next year. So, tell all of your peers about it. We would love for that, see it's the same kind of attendance. But about me, my name is Kevin Way. I am a principal cloud solution security architect here at Microsoft. My focus here in the past few years has been very much cybersecurity. And very much data security. So everything inside of the Purview portal specific to information protection, which is labeling, DLP, insider risk management. I actually have quite a bit of experience with, hence me running this kind of session today. But yeah, it's been a fun ride. I just did over 4 year, hit my 4 year anniversary here at Microsoft. So very much looking forward to this session. All right. So to kick things off, we are going to be focusing on insider risk management, commonly abbreviated as IRM, inside of Purview today, and basically how you can basically leverage Copilot and the whole kind of protection and governance of everything around Gen AI with Copilot and even third party to some extent, right? So just to give a high-level overview of Purview Insider Risk Management first, right? What does the solution do for those of you who may not be familiar with it, right? So I'm not going to read off this slide word by word, but basically think of it as a way of detecting insider risky activity inside of your organization that you may not be aware of today, and you may have DLP, but your DLP policies might not be catching this type of activity. So it's typically, intentional or unintentional egress of sensitive data, typically to outside of your tenant, or it could even be happening internally inside, right, to other places where it shouldn't be. And I'll give some examples of that when we go through it in a bit when we do the demo session. But it's, downloading of SharePoint files, printing files and trying to obfuscate or rename files and then deleting them, sending emails to external email addresses, copying things to USB drive, things of that nature, right? So typically sensitive information, right, in the form of IP, intellectual property. There could be some fraud going on there. There could be some insider trading. I work exclusively with healthcare customers along with Jay. So very much this is stuff that, in healthcare, it's not just to providers or payers. It could also be pharma, right? So pharma, typically, one of my customers uses this tool as their key bedrock for their insider threat program because they want to stop kind of litigation from occurring where, sensitive formulas for the drugs and things of that nature are leaked and could result in lawsuits and things of that nature, right? So that's a typical example I see in pharma and then to some extent healthcare as a whole as well. Now, what we have done in I would say the last year and a half is we are in the Gen AI era, obviously, right? So the whole thing now, the entire product has kind of also expanded its scope to risky AI usage or AI in general, because now people are having access to sites, right? And mostly we're trying to understand, hey, are people actually using or getting access to those sites and then using the prompt and response for legitimate reasons, right? Versus illegitimate exfiltration, things of that nature. So the product has been very much geared towards capturing that kind of info. So basically your users, assuming you've deployed, Copilot in this case, that's going to be the focus, and even third-party Gen AI, which we have support for, is it, are people using it responsibly? Do you have the confidence in your policies and whatnot in your organization for people to use these tools, right, to the best of their ability without causing any kind of financial or reputational problems because of, exfiltration of sensitive information, right? So moving along, this is going to be the basic workflow of how to set up or deploy insider risk management inside of the system, right? So the first thing is first making sure that you have the required permissions and access to the unified audit log. And actually, let me step back up. This presumes that you have the licensing capability, right, or the licensing entitlement to IRM. Typically, what I see, it's M365 E5, or you have a E5 compliance or F5 compliance. And it does not come with E3, so you do need that licensing entitlement for that. But typically, I see some kind of flavor of E5 all up, M365 E5 or E5 compliance, right? And then kind of moving forward with the permissions and the unified audit log, what this tool actually does is actually troll through the audit log, right? The audit log being the source of authority for all of the events that are happening inside of your Microsoft 365 tenant. So think of it, people sending emails, downloading things, any kind of end user activity as well as admin activity where people are making changes to policies, whether that's in Purview or Defender or Exchange Online, right? All of that stuff is logged. So we need access to those logs and the events because that's how we are ultimately going to determine and investigate risky activity, right? Then I'll just go through each one of these. You have the quick start, recommended actions, and analytic insights. That's literally a one-click button to get kind of the high level of, hey, what do we see from the baseline of events in your tenant? And just to give you some insights before you start deploying any policies. Then we go into the configuring inside the risk management settings, right? Now, these are very, very granular. I will show you some of these inside of the demo, but we won't go through everything. But one of the, the previous slide where Jay went through some of those workshops, specifically the onboarding accelerator, there is an entire workshop dedicated to that where we'll take you through all the settings and all of the things that you need to potentially configure before you deploy your first policy, right? And then kind of moving on, after those settings are basically configured and you're happy with those, you go ahead and actually configure the actual policies themselves. And to be clear, those policies are the ones that look at the unified audit log, that look at all of the events, right? And then those are the ones which are basically generating the alerts, right? In this next phase, that once you get the alerts, you are then able to kind of triage them to figure out which ones are true positives versus, benign or false positives. And then you kind of go to the second last phase, which is the investigation process, right? So that's the kind of the meat and crux of the tool where we have lots of different interfaces, I would say, in the UI to have have your team or dedicated team for this. Typically is what I see investigate IRM, and what they do is they actually go in here and look at the content as well as the activity, because obviously if you don't have the ability to actually look at the content which is triggering the alerts, it's very hard to actually determine, hey, is this actually sensitive information? So we do give you the ability to look at that. We have a very specific what they call the Content Explorer view inside of IRM for the investigators to look into, right? And then finally, the taking action, right? So taking action typically here is done internally. I've seen customers kind of use legal teams or compliance teams to take that back. We do have the option, though, to actually escalate what's known as the IRM case into an e-discovery case. So if you actually need to do a deeper dive of the investigation and you need to actually run e-discovery, right? Pull all of the data, pour it into a review set. You got to, filter it that way before you export that, potentially all of that information. That is basically one of the actions available to the system. All right, moving forward then. Again, I'll focus most of this on the demo, but the high level here.
Ozzy.
Oops, was there a question there?
I got it, Kevin. Don't worry.
No worries. Okay. So insider risk management policies, again, here we're looking at templates. So basically when you define the policy, right, typically what most customers do is begin with a template. The template is one that's kind of predefined or pre-configured for you, where we have very specific conditions that basically enumerate different types of risky activities, right? And then once you have that, it's just kind of easier for you to configure the policy because Microsoft basically are guiding you. So you're not having to do everything from scratch. Then obviously the second step here, scoping the policy itself. Do you want it to everyone in your organization? Do you want it to have a specific group of people? And one such example of that, right, is if, there are a bunch of people leaving the organization for whatever reason, and then they are, considered risky for exfiltration of sensitive data because they are departing within, 2 weeks or so, for example, right? I have seen customers target that kind of use case or scenario to the tool versus the entire company. But to really make full leverage of this tool, I do see many companies scoping it to all users as a whole, so that they have kind of a full insights into risky activities going on in the organization as a whole, right? All right, and then it's a policy configuration wizard. That's what it's based on. So the admin, so it's all based on the UI. Unfortunately, there isn't a way to do this today via PowerShell or automation. There is a lot of context here in the UI. So the UI is typically the way to go when you are configuring these policies, right? So you have, threshold settings, content detection, indicators, all sorts of stuff that, I'm going to demo when we go through the policy configuration wizard. Now, we do currently have 10 policy templates, right, across 5 categories. So basically, it's people who are doing data leaks, right, or it's people who are, templates that are for people who are leaving the organization and might be causing risk. And then we also have the risky AI stuff, right? So I'll show you some of that when we actually go through and do the demo as well, so you can see what these categories are. All right, and then, well, actually, this page does show it. So these are the categories themselves. So we have data leaks, we have risky AI usage, we have data theft, we have security policy violations, and that's typically when people are attempting to install, software or things of a nature on their device that is basically blocked. You might want to, know about that, right? Because those risky users are typically, could be doing something nefarious that you need to know about. But again, yeah, health record misuse. This is a very specific one. If you want to link IRM to your health record system, and then you want to see activities on there, people actually accessing, for example, Epic or another system abusively and not for legitimate purposes, right? But I do want to focus today on the risky AI usage here, because that's what we're all about in this series. And I'll take you through the policy template creation for this one, so you kind of see how it links together and how you can monitor basically risky AI usage with this tool. All right, and then the couple of choices we have here off the bat on that theme of risky AI usage, right? There's a couple of them here. The first one is basically detecting when users browse to an AI site via their browser, and typically here you're using Edge. I believe here there's an Edge add-on which is required for this, and if you're using Chrome or Firefox, we do have a specific PowerView extension which you need for this functionality. I just want to call that out. But the second one here actually is more interesting to me. This is the one which is DSPM for AI, both of them. So we covered this, I believe, in one of the first sessions that Jay led, I believe 3 or 4 weeks ago, right? But this one is more specific because this is detecting risky AI usage. What do we mean by that, right? So it's risky prompts and responses. So are there things in the nature of, is there sensitive information that's either coming from the user using the AI through the prompt, or is there stuff actually being exposed in the response, which would be deemed, in the context of healthcare, PHI, PII, right? And, you want to monitor for that. Is that actually a truly legit use case for the tooling, right? And then this tool is what you're going to use to basically consolidate all of that information and get insights into, hey, is this actual real legitimate usage, or is it something that is not legit usage, and therefore that user is risk and we need to go and investigate them and involve the business, right? So it's not just an IT and security thing, right? You're pulling the compliance people, governance, maybe HR, legal, and whatnot, right? This is basically the outcome of these policies in my experience. All right, now I did want to call out, here are the licensing requirements. I'll kind of just briefly go over this. We mentioned the E5 licenses. I did mention on that previous slide, right, the PowerView extension. So you do need that even if you have Edge. So it's not native to just Edge. You do need that extension. And then if you do have Chrome as well as Firefox, I believe you need to have that extension. But for any of you who have deployed our endpoint DLP solution, I believe you may already have this set up in your Chrome and Firefox environments, right? That's what I typically see. But the call out here is basically you do need the extension for Edge, which isn't a requirement for endpoint DLP, but it is a requirement to pull the signals from the browser activity to the AI to insider risks in this case. So just a heads up for that. All right. Oh, sorry, I've skipped one slide. So I am going to go straight to the demo. We will leave the last 5 minutes to Q&A. So we're on the 26-minute mark, I see. So I'm just going to go straight into it. Hopefully the demo gods are with me today, right? So what I will do is just a cover to get to this. You're inside of your Power portal, right? And then what you need to do is typically go into solutions and then click on Insider Risk Management. And if it's not here, I'll just quickly show you how to get to it. You get to this homepage, solutions, right? And then if you scroll down to the data security portion, right? Insider Risk Management is the farthest to the right or the second most to the right, right? Right next here to DSPM for AI. And information protection. So if I click on that, it will take me to the next, to the main page, right, for Insider Risk. And then typically what we have here in my demo tenant is kind of an all-up analytics page of, hey, what do you actually have set up in the environment, right? And if you don't have anything set up in the environment, then you would probably not expect to see too many things on here. But here's the kind of the cliff notes or the TLDR version, right? Take a look at this slide, and what I will do is I will zoom in a little bit because I appreciate folks might not be able to see very well. Hopefully folks can see, but go through these steps right here, turning on the analytics, going through the settings, which I'll demo in a bit, but this is kind of the steps that you need to do to actually get up and running with this tool. So we've actually already turned on the analytics in this demo environment. I do have quite a number of policies here. Hence, you're seeing a lot of the data here actually populated with cases and policies and things of that nature, right? So I will go straight into the settings first. So if I go into settings, and I'll show you some of those relevant ones. I will go into here, I will click on Insider Risk Management. And typically the reason I'm showing you this first is before you deploy your very first policy, right after you have confirmed access, unified audit log, and you've confirmed your licensing, you do typically want to go through these settings, right? Now, a lot of this stuff is turned on for you. I believe this one, for example, the analytics, showing insights at tenant level, showing insights at the user level. Typically, this is stuff I believe it's turned on by default. And if it's not, most customers I know will turn this on so that they have that level of insight at the tenant, at the user level when they do start provisioning their policies, right? Now, the other one I did want to kind of show you here before I go into some of the deeper settings is privacy. We did build this tool on a foundation of privacy. So I believe one of the asks of this tool when it was originally developed and released a few years ago was the anonymization of usernames, right? So you can actually choose to hide the usernames of the users that will appear alongside your policies, or rather the policy alerts. But if you obviously want to see the users' names as well, and you're doing a real investigation and you need to actually tie down the names, you can have that obviously. But if you did want to turn it off, you can do this. And the only caveat with this, right, if you choose to anonymize the name so you can't see the users, if you decide to export the information to a different system or to a SIM, it will not actually keep the anonymization here. The anonymization here is very specific to the UI, but again, it just really kind of gives the option to some companies who don't really want to investigate specific users, but they're just trying to understand risky activity as a whole among the population. So that option is available to you. Now, if I go down into the main crux of the settings here, because we have limited time, I did want to show you the office indicators. Right now, the office indicators, or sorry, the policy indicators here, this forms the crux of the tool, right? The crux of the tool here is like if I expand one of these and I see the different things down in here, you see all of these different type of activities, downloading content from OneDrive, syncing content from OneDrive, SharePoint files. I believe there's an email one here, sending email attachments to free public domains, right? All of these are the kind of activities that we believe is relevant for customers to investigate, right? So if you're coming into here, what you need to know is if you tick on these checkboxes, you're not doing anything to enable them to create alerts per se. What this is doing is saying if you check the box here, you will make it available to be enableable within the confines of the policy wizard, right? Which I will demonstrate in a bit. So what I typically see most customers doing is that they come in here and they turn most of the stuff on, again, just to make sure it's available within the policy construct, right? So they have that option. You are not actually turning anything on yourself. And then the key one here I want to call out here is for device indicators. If you do have your devices onboarded to Purview, you will be able to see all of this stuff light up. If you haven't got devices or even a single device onboarded to Purview, unfortunately, this stuff will not be lit up. It will just be grayed out, right? And then kind of moving down, I do want to move to this generative AI one, apps. So these are the ones where basically which are specific to Gen AI. Right now, I do want to call out here as well that we do have the other categories, right? We have the Copilot experiences, which is, I believe, M365 Copilot, Copilot Chat. I believe it's Fabric Copilot and Security Copilot as well. So just be aware of that. Then we have the other category of enterprise AI apps, right? So this is typically things such as Chat GPT. So these are things where you have a app registration or you have a service principal set up in your Entra ID for that that enterprise AI app to have some kind of access to data inside of your tenant. And then all of the other AI apps, these are typically the ones inside that are SaaS-based, right? And typically the ones that we have in our Defender for Cloud apps, Cloud Discovery Catalog. So think of this as all of the third-party AI that your users, assuming you allow them to, are browsing to. And you want to bring into Insider Risk as a means of, hey, which sites are people actually getting into? What are the prompts and responses? What are people doing with this stuff that we might allow, but isn't typically the Copilot or the enterprise approved AI apps. Right. All right. And then before I go into the policy construct itself, I did want to make clear here the policy timeframes window. Now, this is an important distinction to make because I do want to be clear that this solution isn't intended to catch things in real time, right? That's what you have your DLP for. DLP, data loss prevention. You're trying to catch things at time of egress, right? And you're trying to either block it or audit for it. So this tool is intended to complement DLP, right? So what it does, it's again taking a look at that unified audit log, right? And assuming you are an E5 user, you will have up to a year's records within the unified audit log, or you could pay more and you could have up to 10 years, I believe. But the tool is looking forward and backward. So you have the ability to detect activities 30 days in advance. And then more importantly, I think is a look back period. So typically it's up to 90 days. So typically what happens is, you've constructed the policy and the user generates an alert. We will go back and look at what else they have done. So think of this tool as very much contextual and investigation. We're looking at activities again, which could be inside the risk or inside the threat, but it is over a period of time. Now, can it be used to actually feed into DLP? Yes, it can. There's a feature called adaptive protection, and I won't go into that because we'll probably overrun time, but that's something you can learn if you decide to do one of our workshops. We'll cover that piece, but the main crux of this here is that basically it's an investigative tool. It's for you looking for insider risk activity 30 days ahead, 90 days back, and looking for things that might not be caught in DLP or other things or other systems that you may have internally for insider threat that's looking for things in real time, right? And this is very specific to the Microsoft tenants, but we are now making a big expansion to stuff outside per what I kind of demoed with those other AI apps. All right. So if there are no questions, how are we doing, Jay, for questions on the chat? Is everything making sense? Do I need to address anything? Or are we good?
No, we're doing great. Somebody did ask a question about showing the forensic evidence piece. We really don't have time for that, setting it up. It's something we can earmark for another session.
Indeed,
but there
indeed.
Yeah.
All right. So I will move over to the policy contract now to show you the risky AI usage one. So I'm going back into here. for the demo. And then what I am going to do is I am going to click on my policies. And again, we're making the assumption here that all of my settings have been looked at and configured. And you'll see here on this policy page in this demo tenant, I have multiple policies that have been stood up here. You'll see the policy name, you'll see the policy status, which is a good one to know, just to call this out here, that if we do have any recommendations or warnings, like for example, if I click just on this one, you will see the policy health. Sorry, maybe that's not a good example. Maybe I'll click on this one. So for example, we'll take a look at the policy construct, and then we'll show you, hey, there's a warning, no alerts generated due to the indicator threshold. So you might have those set to too high, right? And therefore you need to kind of lower the thresholds to actually generate alerts. So we are giving you some guidance here. Hey, if we see something, right, and it's not quite right, these are the things that you kind of need to pay heed post deploying the policy, right? And then here, just a quickly give overview, we'll tell you the users in scope, active alerts, confirmed alerts, all of the kind of high level stuff within the confines of the policy. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to create the policy. So typically I see customers do the quick policy. And if I click on that, I'll just move this Copilot on the window. Typically, I'm going to show this one, risky AI usage, right? Because that's our focus in this webinar. If I click get started on this, right, what it will do is it will actually basically construct the policy for me already. Now, if I wanted to, and I just was playing around with this and I didn't want to see any of the individual settings, I could simply click on this blue button, right? And that would actually create the policy for me. Now, there is a little call out here. I just want to say there's a pay-as-you-go price modeling in effect. Now, this does affect the stuff that you can collect from a non-M365 Copilots and enterprise AI app indicators. So I can't go into that into any detail, but if between me and Jay, we could probably help answer some questions offline about that if needed. But just know that if you are capturing non-M365 Copilot and enterprise AI app, there is a separate charge, which is pay as you go, linked to an Azure subscription. But for this purpose, I'm not going to go ahead and create policy because I want to click customize. I want to take you guys and girls through the policy construct, right? And hopefully this loads in a few seconds. That we'll go through the stuff here, right? So now we're looking at the policy template. Now it is telling you the prerequisites here for the policy. It's showing here is the green for communication compliance. It is recommended but optional. If you remember a couple of sessions ago, I believe Jay went through this module. So it is looking for that ideally. If you have that entitled right to you and you have that already set up, or even if you don't, you might want to consider that. There's also these other things such as the HR data connector, right, which is also optional or recommended. That's if you want to connect it to a Workday or Ulti-Pro, right, and you want to basically feed it into termination and resignation dates of employees or contractors, right, and you want to basically trigger the policies into effect for users who are leaving the organization, right, because that's typically the number one use case for the scoping of the tool I see for people who are maybe leaving or departing soon, right? Then you have the devices onboarded stuff here, right? The call out here is what I said earlier. If you already have endpoint DLP deployed, you should be good for this. But if you have some flavor of E5 or F5 that you have the ability to onboard the devices to Purview, I would say this is highly recommended because that device telemetry you see with the device indicators that I was kind of showing a few minutes ago, all of that stuff lights up. So if you don't have this, then the device stuff, people browsing to risky sites or copying things to USB, things of that nature, you won't see that as the activity. So it says optional here. Sure, it's optional, but if you do have that entitlement and it's within scope, it is also recommended, right? And then we go down into the triggering events here, right? We have all of these different things. User matches a communication compliance policy. Someone's account is deleted from Entra ID, and that's typically when a user offboards, right, linked to the HR connector. And then, just for the purpose of brevity, the activities themselves, risky prompts in Copilot. So do those things contain, sensitive information in the prompt that you don't want being exposed in the prompt? receive sensitive responses, meaning are they coming back with documents that are labeled or contain some kind of sensitive info if you've defined your SITs or sensitive information types inside a purview. And then just kind of generally, browsing excessively as opposed to generative AI sites. So that, in my understanding, is the third-party stuff as much as the Copilot stuff as well. So if I hit next on here, you can obviously name it. You would put the description. I do see customers, put something fairly descriptive here. If you're turning this on as part of a change, you might want to reference a change number there, right? So you can tie it back to, hey, who actually created this policy and what it was for, right? And then we have the concept of admin units. I'll kind of skim over this, but we do have the ability to restrict the policy to a specific set of users or groups when you are actually looking over the alerts. Most cases, customers aren't doing this just yet, so nothing to worry about here. Typically, most customers would skip over this piece. Now, this is where we do get interesting. We are now talking about the actual scoping of the policy itself to users and groups and adaptive scopes. So you do have the option here to go with everyone in the entire org, and then I will make a distinction with everyone because we'll talk about the following configuration. But specific users and groups here, right? Adaptive scopes. If you did want to say this to a specific user or group, or if you wanted to do adaptive scopes, and adaptive scopes are a way to basically group people together based on their Entra ID attributes. So for example, if you wanted to group people by their department or their location or their manager or any one of those combination of attributes that are available in Entra ID, formerly known as Azure Active Directory, you can choose to do so as well. Now, I am going to keep my policy all users, groups, and scopes because I want to make that distinction with the actual triggering event in the following screen. But if I click next on this, I do have the option here to exclude. So most cases, if you're scoping to everyone, you might want to exclude here to a bunch of people. I don't know, executives or people who are exempt from whatever scenario you are actually putting this policy together for. And you can do here users, and I think the groups, I think they have to be mail enabled. So it's typically mail enabled distribution groups or distribution groups, I believe. I think you can also use M365 groups. Now, if I hit next on that, now I get the choice whether I want to prioritize content. Now, this one is an interesting choice because if you know what you're doing and you want to say, okay, I have a very specific use case for IRM, I want to focus on these very specific sites or these labels or sensitive info types or file extensions and trainable classifiers. You can choose to do that if you wish to. For the purpose of the demo, I'm actually going to go through and select that, but you could also say, I don't want to prioritize content now. And that what that does is basically broaden the scope of the policy to look at more types of different activities in relation to sensitive information versus just this specific thing here. Now, if you were to do this, I'm actually going to click on here, but if you were to click next, you would actually have to go choose the different sites and labels and info types that you want to focus on. But for the purpose of brevity, I think we're 43 minutes in. I will choose this option here and go through the rest of the screen. So now we're talking about the triggering event. Right now, the important thing to note about this tool, this is not this is unlike DLP. So DLP, you typically have conditions in a policy, right? And then once you have those conditions in the policy that are met over a certain threshold, say, for example, somebody emailed, 10 instances or 10 social security numbers in your DLP policy, caught it and blocked it. Yes, that's fine. The difference with this tool is we have the concept of the triggering event, right? Now, the triggering event is typically some type of activity that must occur for the user to be brought into the scope of the policy. Now, you might ask me, Kevin, I thought you selected all users as the scope of the policy. Yes, I did, but this is a further refinement of that previous screen where I selected all users. So I could select all users, right? But then for this, the actual scoping of the policy where the user will come into the scope and generate alerts will be based on these triggering events. So for example, this one, you have user account deleted from Microsoft Entra ID, right? When somebody is typically offboarding, you could choose different things, right? You could choose communication compliance. You could choose something like a user browsing to a risky website, for example, right? all of these other things. And then all these other things like risky or sensitive content, I'm just going to say that for the sake of it, because this is what we want done, right? So I'm going to click next. And then what happens here is you now get to choose your thresholds, right? Your thresholds are basically what volume of a specific type of activity do you want to alert on? And then you can basically choose say between, hey, the defaults, which is what Microsoft think, which might be recommended to go first time around. But once you go a second time around and once you start diving deeper, you might want to come in here and actually change the thresholds yourself, which many customers I know, especially in the health space that have really operationalized this tool, they have done that. But for the purposes of this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and click apply built-in thresholds. I'm going to hit next on here. And then I actually get to choose the indicators right now. If you think back to this, the indicators are actually the risky activities that will generate the alert. So if you see all of this, and I expand all of this stuff has been turned on. And the reason it has been turned on is because when I was going through my settings, right, all of this stuff was already checked off. And therefore now I can basically select it within the confines of the policy wizard. And if you do not have those in the settings, right, all of this stuff will be turned on. Hence my kind of, best practice advice is to turn everything on the settings so you do have the choice or chance to actually turn stuff on in here. So I'll just quickly expand everything here. There is an Azure AI Content Safety. For some reason, that one hasn't been enabled. We do have the one here I did want to click on as well. The data loss prevention policies. Now this one will be, I will have to go back. But if this one is a setting, and in fact, let me do that. I'm going to go back here and just quickly show you this setting here. If I go back into settings and inside the risk management, there is a policy indicator here, which is specific to existing DLP policies. So if I scroll down here and I click on this, the note here is basically, if I click on this, you can actually add the DLP policies that you wish to. And I have quite a few in this demo environment. And then what will happen is if I actually add my DLP policies here, I'm just going to do it. For example, this Copilot, couple of Copilot ones here. And if I click add on this, right, and if I save this, hopefully what that will mean when I go back to my other screen here, if the demo goes through, if I click back, if I click next, and sorry, go to indicators here. And if I scroll down, okay, so it probably hasn't updated, but if I were to go back and cancel out of this and go through the wizard, this would be lit up. And then I would be able to select from the DLP policies themselves. So if I want to know if people are actually, triggering DLP alerts, and I want that to be an alert in IRM as well, right? But all of this other stuff, just to be clear, receiving sensitive response, entering a risky prompt, this is the stuff that you definitely want to check in this policy, because these are the alerts that form the construct of the risky AI usage policy, right? This is the stuff that you actually want to see. Now, if I hit next on this, there's some detections options here. Some of these are new, so you have the ability here to downgrade or remove what's called a label or sensitivity label from the file. So this is fairly new. I haven't had a chance to test this myself. You do have the concept of the risk score booster. That's a little bit of a mouthful. And that's if you want to do that, where you basically say, okay, this user is going to be more risky because they are above their baseline or their level of usual activity for the day. You could click on that here. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on that because that's a typical thing of, hey, if someone is doing something above their activity, right, you want to know about that. So if I click next on here, now I actually get into the indicator threshold. So again, the distinction here is to do with the thresholds between the triggering event, right, to bring people into the scope of the policy, and then the indicators themselves for the actual generation of the alerts. You get to pick between low, medium, and high. So this is the stuff where I would typically go with the apply thresholds by Microsoft, but once you start getting into this, you might want to start tweaking what's considered a low severity alert, in this case 10 to 20, and then basically anything below 10 here, in this case, wouldn't generate the alert, right? And then it has to be a minimum of more than 10 to 20, 20 to 30 for medium, and then 30 to 30 or 30, more than 30, I should say here to generate the high severity alerts, right, that you need to investigate. And then if I kind of scroll down here, it's the same kind of thing for all of the different AI app categories. So you have the Copilot experiences, you have the generative AI apps, you have all of the different flavors of the apps here, right? So I'm going to just go ahead and click on this one, apply the threshold to Microsoft. And then if I hit next, basically it just gives the summarization of the configuration. And then if I were to hit submit, I'm not, because this is a controlled demo environment, it would actually go ahead and create the policy here. Now I'm going to go here quickly because I know we're kind of at 10 minutes left. We can go over a little bit for folks who want to stay on this call, but I'm quickly going to show the alerts here. Now, the alerts, again, are what happens or what get generated once you have those policies in place, right? And then people are doing the activities that brings them to the scope of the policy by the triggering event. And then the actual alerts themselves will actually pertain to the indicators that you've selected, right? And based on the threshold, whether it's Microsoft recommended ones or whether ones you've tweaked yourself. Now, if I click on one of these alerts. Oh, and the plug here for the Copilot, hopefully it will work for me. If you have Security Copilot enabled for this, if you click on this button, what will happen here is you will get the contextual alert summary of the alert. And if the demo gods are with me here, it will actually give me a summary of what does the alert mean. So this is basically very, very beneficial, useful for the investigators, right? So instead of having to click inside of the policy and trying to figure out, hey, what does this actual alert mean? It will give you a nice summary here. And then if you have Copilot enabled here and you want to click on some of these predefined prompts, or you want to actually ask a question to dive a little bit deeper, if I click on one of these, hopefully it will show me. That's a way to basically glean insights from the alert for the investigator to determine, hey, is this something that I actually want to convert into a case, right? So if I go ahead, so it did show me that if I actually go ahead and click on the alert ID, I will be given into the alert page, right? Now, this isn't the full in-depth one, right? To be clear, this is going to give you what's known as the Activity Explorer view. So, for example, in this one, this is going to show you the different types of sensitive prompts that we've detected. So in this case, a sensitive response, but we also will see the risky response. Now, if I do, hopefully I have the right permission here, but if you do have the right permission, you will actually be able to see the actual prompt itself. So there's a very specific role group that gives you access to this. I don't know if it's loading up in my environment. I apologize, but let's just imagine you did have that access. You would be able to see the full prompt here. And then based on the sensitive information, here it's example, it's showing full names that you could have, social security, credit card number, medical record number, depending on your industry, right? If you have all of those defined in Purview, that's where all of this stuff is going to come from, right? And it doesn't look like it wants to play with me today. But anyway, if I go back and if I click on, I'll close out of this and go onto all risk factors, hopefully there will be something shown here. Again, this is kind of a deeper kind of understanding, and it shows no activity here, unfortunately. But if there were risk factors, if there were other triggering events and alerts that you need to be aware of, kind of all up this page, it would be shown here. And then if you go into user activity, well, it's probably not a good example here to show you. You'll see some dots here. So what we'll do is we'll go out into this and we'll go into a case, I should say. Oh, it's playing with me. You do have the option here. So once you've gone into here, I think I've removed this page, but there is a button on here, probably not a good choice. If I come out of here and go back into the alert, I do want to call out here that there is this button. Yes, so this blue button, this is the one that's basically going to say, okay, I believe all of these alerts are legitimate and I actually want to go ahead and create a case. And the case is a deeper investigation once you've confirmed a user's activities within an alert is basically legitimate. So you can click on this. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to make changes to this demo environment. But if I go into my cases, right, I will be able to see stuff on here. So these are predefined cases. I am going to go pick one, which is, I believe, this one, test risky AI usage. So if I click on this, you will see the case overview, right? Now, there's a lot going on in this page, right? So don't feel like it's overwhelmed, but I think sometimes more is more, because once you've fully gotten around and operationalized this tool, and if I click on the different things here, such as the alerts, right? So these are alerts that were generated from the policies, right? So this one was a risky AI usage policy. And then if you click on these different tabs, the user activity, I will see here. And then what it will present is this kind of line graph over a period of time. It will show you all of the different events, which basically correlate to what caused the alert in the first place. And then if you click on these events themselves, it will take you to what's known as the Activity Explorer. And really, that's where you'll be able to kind of do a deeper dive into the activity. So be able to see the device name that the user was performing this on, what URL were they trying to go to at that time. In this case, this is stuff which is files downloaded from SharePoint. Let me go back and see if there's something else which is AI specific. So if I go on, for example, this one, risky prompt entered in Copilot, and if I click on this event here, there we go. So we see here that's the stuff that's, why did we deem this as risky? Who was the user? What's their name, EPN? What kind of sensitive info? And again, if you have the correct permissions, which unfortunately it doesn't appear I have in this demo environment, you will be able to see the prompt there for the user in question. All right. And then moving along, you have the concept of forensic evidence. Just to cover this quickly, I think someone asked the question in the chat. This is one where you'll be able to see the screen recordings of people who are deemed risky. So if you've enabled that separate feature for forensic evidence, screen captures will all be available here. So you can actually see what people are doing if you have a need to do so. The other main thing here is the Content Explorer, and the Content Explorer is absolutely critical to the investigation, because then you will be able to actually go inside. In this case, it's a YAML file, and you will actually be able to see the content of stuff. So I believe in here, what's this one? This appears to be KQL, but you'll be able to see documents, you'll be able to see emails and things of that nature here. I believe when it comes to Copilot, I think it sees YAML files as well. But you will be able to see things here that relate to the sensitive, either response or the prompt inside of the Content Explorer. It just allows your investigators to go and look at the content itself. So you have all of that context in addition to the activities, right? And then what I was saying earlier, once you've done the investigation, you can resolve the case, and that will close the case. And I think it will keep the information in the case for a period of 90 days before things disappear. Or what you could do here is you can do the email notice if you need to notify other people. You can do things like Power Automate flows if you want to do other things in Power Automate, like notifying people, or maybe creating a ServiceNow ticket, or some other third-party integration. But the native one here is the escalate for investigation. So if you were to click on this, what this would do is it would bring this entire IRM case and the content into an e-discovery case. And assuming if you have a premium e-discovery, or even standard, I think, but typically premium e-discovery, you will be able to run that e-discovery and pull things into a review set and whatnot. So I think we are at the 58-minute mark. I wanted to move over hopefully to the Q&A section. Does anyone have any questions I can help answer, or anything? Jay, feel free to chime in as well, sir.
Yeah, everybody can come off mute now, so feel free to ask questions if you have any. More than happy to answer those as we go. Great job, Kevin. Big round of applause for Kevin. There's a lot of information inside of risk there, and we're just talking about it. I think I saw Stuart has a hand up, or somebody had a hand up there. Feel free to come off mute if you wish. Maybe that was supposed to be a clap, because those buttons are right next to each other.
Any questions? No silly questions, so don't be shy. Feel free to come off mute. It's all good. All good. Otherwise, I might assume I may have done such a good job that nobody has questions, which is never the case with my customers usually, but maybe today is my lucky day.
All right. Well, if there are no questions, let me come off of mute. Thank you again, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate the participation. Really appreciate all the questions in the chat window. Thank you again for just being here for this entire series. Like I said, Do fill out that survey that I posted in the chat. I'll just put it up there one more time so everybody can see it. We do take your feedback very seriously. And like I said, we are planning on another series of sessions in 2026. So, give us, and one of the questions in that survey is other topics. I know there's a lot of other topics we can cover out here, so please give us our feedback. And thank you all again. It's been a great 6-session series. I will send out the PDF of this particular PowerPoint presentation, along with a link to this recording as well, once I get it processed and put up there on YouTube. And then, again, feel free to follow my YouTube channel. Feel free to follow me on LinkedIn as well. I'm always posting some interesting stuff here and there around this and everything else. So thank you all. I know time's one thing we can never get back. So thank you for spending the last hour with Kevin and I. And great job, Kevin. Big round of applause for Kevin.
Thank you
so much.
Appreciate it.
Great. Awesome work, everybody. All right. Have a great rest of the day. Have a great weekend. And we'll see you all again in 2026. Feel free to reach out to me any questions. It's jay.cotton@microsoft.com. And we will see you all again. Thank you so much. Have a great day and a great week and a weekend. Just wrapped.